And I guess what I mainly want to say is, you know, the libraries say that they build community, and with Ronnie, they really do. The fact is, we have had such a great collaboration. She's really promoted the community partnership. And together we have worked on many projects where we used to put together a youth program guide, which was a lot of work where we found out what all the different youth programs were, and it was a lot of work to put this guide together, but we did it, and it was not just the library, but it was all of the other programs in the community. We also worked together on the Albany Reads, and then for the last 10 years, the Albany Library and the Albany Y have collaborated to put together the Brown Bag Speakers Forum. So it has been such a joy to work with you all of these years, Ronnie, and can't sort of imagine Albany without you as our librarian, but we wish you all the best in your retirement. And the fact is, Ronnie has said that as soon as she retires, that she's going to really start working out again at the Albany Y, and we want to be sure that she's going to do that. So what we have in here is a 3-month membership, so you're going to start off with
Ronnie actually hired me into the Alameda County Library system as a clerk. I was here for a few months, and then I left and came back 10 years later. But I particularly wanted to remark on Richard's comment about their quirky staff, because the first staff meeting I ever went to at the old library as a clerk was everybody sitting around, sort of grouchily around this table, and there were two staff members having an argument about the importance of astrology. And one of them was saying that they believed in astrology and explained why, and the other person said, I don't believe at all in astrology, it's garbage, and the other one said, well, you would say that, you're a Leo. So, thank you, Ronnie, for being a wonderful manager.
I worked with Ronnie since 1986 as her second in command, circulation supervisor. And I don't think I'm going to be able to say a lot, because if I do, I'll start crying. But I will miss you. Okay. I do have something for you. Very typical. That's very typical. Ronnie has also made me a better person in many ways. And so I tell you how to please you. And as a thought from everybody here, all the contributions that have come to me for gifts and are still coming, this is a gift for you. We've thought of many different things. I've had lots of different suggestions. We know if you like Best of Broadway, the Symphony, Berkeley Rep, Zellerbach, and a lot of different places you'd like to go and see. You know you like to travel. So I thought, rather than trying to get something like a season pass, you might want to pick and choose the ones you want to do. So we felt that a Visa gift card was the best option for you, and so you can have that to do what you like with. And we also thought about your exercising your little classes. I know you just got to do that, but we do know that one of the best things Ronnie told me since she's been working part-time is that she could do her afternoon or late morning yoga classes on Tuesday afternoon. Mid-morning, right. But I just wanted to tell you how much, I've appreciated working with you, and I know you'll have a good time and we'll be around for a while.
amazing and wonderful, and they, of course, let me think that there were going to be 20 people in the library for lemon water. And they went along with that for a while, and as it evolved, they were so gracious about doing this. And so I would like to say I called you all together to thank you. And that's really what is important to me. And so I hope you'll bear with me, because I really have several pages and I want to talk about some things. My last time, right? Okay. Don't get to do it again. So this is an awesome day, and like my dad says, I wish everybody would have a room full of people who are so meaningful and wonderful to them as this room of people feels to me. But I am going, first, I want to talk about certain people, and I also want to be inclusive, so you're going to bear with me. And the first group I want to introduce is my family. I think, I just can't imagine how better it could be to have my two parents here with me today, and that is Lynn and Ed, and I want them to stand up just for a minute. Now, if you want to know how I became a librarian or why I became a librarian, it was because of my mother, who figured me out, and she decided at a very early age that I was somebody who loved to read, and kept all my books in perfect order in my room. And so she put those two things together. And knew way before I knew that I would be a librarian, and she was right. I also added to that some sense of social justice. I grew up in the 60s, and I saw changes happening, and the library in our community was a place where a lot of people gathered and was very inclusive. And so at my very first interview for Alameda County, I told people that we had the bookmobile stop in front of our house. And I asked my mother a couple of weeks ago why the bookmobile stopped in front of our house. And she didn't quite remember. She was a friend of the library. I thought it was so that they could use the bathroom. But that was really important. And I think when I became a manager, it helped that I had been an older sister, because I think I had a little bit of sense of how to get somebody to do something that you wanted them to do that they might not have wanted to do. So I think I was a little bit of a bossy older sister. My dad, who came up and spoke, has always supported me. And except right this minute, where he's not so sure about retirement, and that's because he hasn't retired. So I look forward to more hanging out in the warm pools at Rossport, where we go together to swim and we talk politics. We have really good talks. I'm sitting in noodles on the warm pools at Rossport. But I'll have to fit it in when he's not working. So that's the challenge. I have two amazing sons. Stefan is in Hawaii, and Jesse is here with me today. And it was a check. Jesse, you don't want to stand. You can just raise your hand. But these guys grew up as the children of the town librarian. And I think sometimes that was fun, and sometimes it wasn't that much fun. I think every once in a while their friends would tell a story about, the librarian who kicked them out of the library or told them to be quiet, and that was their mother. But they were always gracious. They never told me they were embarrassed that their mother was the town librarian, and I appreciate that. And one of our family stories was there were many times when I would have to be at a meeting or at the library late, and I would tell them that I wasn't going to come home, be home to kiss them goodnight or say goodnight. And so the question was always, well, is this a meeting with cake? and a lot of our meetings had cake that were made by Paula. And so if it was a meeting with cake, then I was expected to bring home 3 pieces of cake and leave them on the kitchen counter. And so, but I wanted to say, Jesse, that this is a meeting with cake. But you have to wait. And David, I always have to put, my dad is pointing to David. special day in front of the Solano Avenue Library. And I think that was because I wanted him to know who I was, and what he was kind of getting in for was that I really had a strong responsibility in the community. And David is the one who has heard all the library stories. I mean, I come home almost every night, and I tell a library story, and there are good stories, and sometimes they're not so good stories. And David is a wonderful listener and a supportive person and not judgmental. And he's really the one who's been there. And what David does for me is he takes me to beautiful places. He takes me to the woods. He takes me to the mountains. He takes me to the beach. And that's where I chill. Although he's not allowed to say chill, because I don't like chill. But that's what he does. And so I'm glad Alan said something about David, but really, David has been the one that has kept me sane in this whole journey. So thank you, David. I have a few other people at my family table. My mother said you have to have a family table. And she's a good party planner. And so I want to mention Sasha and Betsy and Jeffrey and Mary Jane, who are really good, important friends of mine who are here with me today, and that's really special. So thank you to those of you for being here. So I have really had a wonderful library career, and this kind of an event gets you thinking about all the things that have been important to you and what's influenced you. And I'm going to mention some outstanding librarians that have been important to me. And the first librarian was Ada E. Jackson, and I called her Mrs. Jackson. And she was my supervisor at New York Public Library. And Mrs. Jackson really believed that the library existed as part of the community. That you got out of the library, you talked to the community, you found out what was going on, you worked with the community in programs. And that was the origin of a New York Public Library program called the Community Information Project, but it was really her deep belief that a library did not exist as a building, isolated from where it was. Gina Manudri is here. And Gina was the first person, as Carol said, to interview for me for Alameda County. I'm not sure why I got, I know I got a 5.5 because I was squeezed in between other interviews. But Gina was the person who involved me in my first political campaign that had to do with libraries, and this was over in Berkeley Public. And Gina really taught me that the librarian has to be a political person. You have to be involved in what's going on in your community, not just on the organization level, but on the political level. And especially in California, you will need your political contacts and resources to further the library. And so Gina gave me my first lessons in politics, and I remember that. Thank you, Gina. And Diane Davenport, who I'm also honored to have here, was the first person to hire me for Alameda County Library as part of the amazing extension services, which Carolyn described as the jail service. I think it was literacy, bookmobile. And I always describe the bookmobile job as the only job, I think, except for maybe an ice cream truck, where you kind of come in down the street and all the kids are jumping up and down when they see you. So I don't think too many people have that job experience, but that's what it is to be shoulders up right on the bookmobile. And Diane, I mean, I love that Richard, I didn't know Richard was going to talk about that, but really Diane, the Extension Services was also an incredibly talented but quirky staff. And we were all, very, very strong-willed. And Diane was the manager who showed me how to do that, how to work with the talents of the people that you work with and still do a really good job and keep things together as a whole. So I think those were the early lessons that really shaped me, and Diane was part of that. So Richard, thank Diane.
Thanks.
I have worked with 4 county librarians, Barbara Boyd, Jean Cooper, Linda Wood, and Jean Packett. And all of those people are strongly committed to the cause of libraries and passionate. And passion for what we do is another characteristic of people who work for the library. And they were all are strong in different ways. I have some supervisors here, and Larry Duffball, and Peggy Watson. Helen Duggar is not here, sending flowers, it's nice. But I know I haven't been an easy person to supervise. See, I'm one of those quirky people. Where's Peggy? Yeah, Peggy said some very nice things about me on Wednesday at the management meeting, but I give her a hard time, and I think I'm expected to, so. So I appreciate them. I appreciate good supervisors. It teaches me how to be a good supervisor, and I think it's been worth it. Larry, yeah? So when I came to the Albany Library 32 years ago, is that right? 32 years ago. And I stood in the back of the children's room, in the old library, every time you had a program, you had to move all of the furniture, any kind of a program. And I was standing in the back of the children's room, and they were having a going-away party for Joan Ariel, who was my predecessor. And I got the job at Albany. I was living in Albany, so I was really excited. I didn't have to commute to Fremont. But Albany at that time had a reputation for an amazing staff, an incredible friends group, and an amazing community. I knew that because I lived here. The building was so-so, but it's funny because when we think of that old building, I mean, it really was a very vibrant little place. It was right on Solano Avenue, and the parades would go by, and you really felt like you were part of the community in a very integral way. But my main thought, and I tried to word this in a way that sounds right in the larger group, Carol, I keep calling her Carol. My main thought was, Ronnie, this is a great opportunity, don't mess it up. I really did. I really felt like, all I could do was take the good energy that was here and keep it going. And I still feel that way. I still feel that way. Hopefully, I'll get through the speech and I'll have accomplished that. So that's it. And so it is really thanks to so many people in this room that we, as a library and a community, have been able to accomplish so many things. So all the things that have been read were all accomplished with so many people that are here. And I'm gonna say this, that after I wrote the first draft of the speech, I called my friend Joan Larson, who's right there. I mentioned you, Joan. And I said to Joan, okay, Joan, I gotta read you the speech and see what you think. And I wasn't reading it to anybody, but I needed some wise counsel, and Joan was wise counsel. And Joan gave me an idea, and I'm gonna try it. But I'm gonna need your help. So let's bear with me, see if I can manage one more thing here, okay? So the first people I want to thank are all the people who currently work at the Albany Library. And I'm a little afraid that some of them actually have left already because they were actually opening the library at 1 o'clock, and I was trying to time this before we opened. But I'm going to ask, if you currently work at the Albany Library, would you stand up? Come on, guys. Who make it happen every day. And I'm sorry, I think Eric has left to open the library. That's unfortunate. I told him I was going to mention his name, but sometimes right before we open, Eric says, showtime. And we know that we're about to open, and that's really how it feels every day, that we're putting on a show, we're welcoming the community, we're getting ready, we're ready, we've opened up our doors, and he yells showtime, and then do so that we all work as totally hard as we can for whatever it's 8 hours. And then at the end, we assemble by the back door, and we feel usually pretty good about what we've done that day. And that's really the essence of what it's about. And probably one of the things I'm going to miss the most is just that feeling of accomplishment, feeling working with a great, maybe a little perky group of people with all a huge amount to contribute. So I want to say that. There are also, amazingly, some people in this room who worked at the Albany Library before I arrived. And I just want to acknowledge them because they were part of why it was so great when I came. So I think if you stand up, that'll help me. But I think it's Diana and Richard, Joe, and Steve, Marianne. Anyway, so you could just see, it was great before I came. And then there are some people like Julie and Paul, if you'd stand up, people who have worked here during the time of the So that's the best you can do, is have great staff. Okay. I also want to acknowledge how many people in this room work or have worked in Alameda County Library. I am always, always proud to be a member of the library community. I feel like library workers are just the best. They care, they're passionate, they work hard, they're not cynical. They believe in libraries in a really intense way. I say they are overachievers and idealists. I think those are the things I want to say. And I always have called on my colleagues for help. I call on the people who are currently working. I've worked with the people in this room who worked for Alameda County before. And so I just want them to stand, and I want to acknowledge everybody who currently or has worked for Alameda County Library, because you're part of my community. Thank you so much. And I guess at this moment, I had something where I said I just want to acknowledge my fellow managers of libraries, because that's my core team. Those are the people who actually know the job that I'm doing every day, and there are many of them here. And Carolyn, of course, is my comrade. People who know me and Carolyn know that we often call each other at 3 o'clock almost every working day. Sometimes to discuss matters of importance like, is there a God? But also just to share the funny story of something that just happened on our reference desk. So everybody should have a good friend in the organization, like Carolyn. Thank you, Carolyn. Can I go one more time? You guys are okay? Entertained. Before I start talking about the city, the community, and the friends that are here, I just want to pause for a minute and acknowledge 2 people who have been in my heart over the past couple of weeks. And Jewel Gawachi is one of them. Jewel passed away about a month ago. And Jewel was one of the people that when I came to the community really welcomed me. And she was such a role model. She was a working mother. She had a business. She was involved in government. She was involved in community organizations. And she also took the time just to be a good friend. And Jewel is somebody that those of us in the community know and love and are missing right now. And Judy Lieberman. Judy Lieberman worked for the city, and in her last role, she was the city liaison to the Albany Library Board. And also just another wonderful example of people who work for the city and people who work for government who just are so committed and caring and do such a fabulous job. And so Judy is in my heart this week too, so I wanted to mention that. And I told Judy's husband that I was going to mention Judy today, and I thought that was a good thing. So my journey has been full of the good people who live and work work in this town, and it's very, makes me feel very proud to have a room, half of librarians and half of others, right? And because you've all been so important in what we've been able to accomplish. So I wrote something about the Friends of the Albany Library, but here's what happened. I came yesterday in the afternoon. I was told to report with my cutting board and knives for a work party to help prepare the food for this event. And anything I could say was just put aside by that, amazing sense of working with these people who have been there from the very beginning when I first came, who know how to do a job. I mean, that's what I thought. They know what they're doing. And put together this party, but welcomed me from the very, very beginning. And the Friends of the Albany Library, I always say, are friends with a big F and a small f, because they're friends. And this library would not be what it is. And in fact, most of the things that were accomplished would never have been accomplished without the core group of people who just cared about the library. And I'm just going to say Mary Bill Hartung and the Matt Keddys and Catherine Webb. I remember Catherine Webb at a city council meeting shaking her stick. She walked up to the front of the city council meeting, she started shaking her stick at them and said, "You better build this library before I die." And they did. So I would like anybody who has ever worked with the Friends to stand and get a round of applause for these 3 days. So thank you. I'm sorry, I have to mention some names. I have to talk. Where is Liz? Is she in the kitchen? Oh, there you are. Okay. Liz is the current president. Marcia, Beth, Dee, Clara Ray, Hank, Joan, Eve, just amazing, amazing people. I think that's the Friends Board. So thank you, thank you, thank you. The building happened because so many people work together in the city and the community. Ruth Gannon might have showed up, but she didn't. Where's Thelma? Ruth Gannon was one of the first city council members I ever worked with. Bob Gouletz got the ball rolling where he thought this would be a good site for a library community center. I worked with several city managers and state, county, and city officials that supported this effort to make this library happen and to keep the library strong. Kim Denton is here, and Kim and I were part of the team that did the Albany Center Builders, which got the fundraising for this building and sold the tiles on the front of the building. We had our adventures. And Richard, as he mentioned, and Ed Phillips, who wrote the grant that got this. And it was a competitive grant. There were only three libraries awarded, and Karen, to build this building. And so, those were all the people that made it happen. But then you had to operate it. And so you had to have people in here, not just a building. And so we knew we needed to go to the voters in Albany for funding. And Sally Aldis was kind of the mother of political campaigns in those days. She had a mailing list. And so we worked with Sally Aldis, who helped us put together the first campaign, which was Yes I Am, 1994. And Carol Truman, who was the co-chair of that campaign, is here. Is Carol? And there's Carol over in the yellow. Carol and David Carroll. So they stepped up, and then, so many years later, we needed to go back again, and Joe Larson was the chair of the Yes on G campaign in 2006, and Joan is here. And these are people. So the library could open on Sundays, which it's open, right? Right there. So I wanted to do a blanket thank you to all the people in the community, but I also wanted to mention the Albany Library Board, and there are people in this room who have served on the library board and continue to serve on the board, and they're the ones who really watch the money and make sure that Albany's funds are spent for quality library service. So could I now have everybody who works for the city and government and the library board stand up, and I'd like to. Rosalie, Hank, there's Karen, she's not here, and Alan Rifford, the current board members, he's cruising the Mediterranean. So, and then I'm so glad that Gail came up, and I'm so thrilled that she gave me that YMCA membership. But it's also been the people in the community, and some other people that are here are some of our providers that we have used the Friends money. We've hired amazing people to offer programs and services at the library, like crafts and knitting and poetry, and some of those are people, and the wide brown bag speakers, and some of those people are here as well. So one last time, if you're a special instructor, or you've worked with me in the community on a program, okay, so I'm going to end with a final story. And I hope the story will cover everyone in the room that hasn't stood up yet. That's the goal. Okay. And so it was about 6 weeks ago when I announced that I was actually going to finally retire and set the party date. And I happened to go to a performance on the Cal campus with my friend Jeffrey to see his son Sam dance, who dances with Mark Morris. And we, it's kind of a, I would say, a little bit upscale band. And as I was seated, and this woman walked past me, who I didn't know, and as she walked past me, she said, "Oh, you're the Albany librarian." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Fantastic library." And then she just walked out. I just felt good. So several days later, I was at the El Cerrito DMV office, and it was, the total opposite scene. It was like a heat wave, and it was crowded, and people were miserable, and everybody was jammed in there, and I sort of took my seat, and this woman turned to me in this really loud voice. She said, "You're the Albany librarian." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "You really helped me." And it was sort of an equally wonderful moment for me to feel that. And I thought about these incidents a lot. I thought, oh, nobody's going to say this to me again. But that wasn't the point. But I think what resonates to me about them is that they really represent all the people that the library serves. And how wonderful is that adults and teens and kids, they come in our doors. They come for books. They come for DVDs. They come to read their poems, or to do a craft, or to hear a story, or to sing a song. And a lot of people just come to talk, because we are real people who are at the other end. And so a lot of people tell me amazingly wonderful stories all the time at the reference desk, at the circulation desk. And we are there to hear them and to help them. And how important is that in the community to have those places where people come and talk to you and feel so good about it. So that's the journey that I've been on with all of you. And so what I have to say is thank you. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be part of this, giving me this wonderful community to work with. And thank you so much for coming. So I want to give my final thanks to all the party people, Liz and Paula and the library staff and the friends. I mean, it's just been magnificent. To Carolyn for emceeing and being my comrade in this. And now, here's my punchline. Since this is a meeting with cake, we can eat cake.